My 32nd birthday was supposed to be the moment I finally breathed easy. Our new Austin house glowed under strings of soft lights, music humming low as friends toasted my startup's success. My husband Daniel handed me a glass statue, sleek, shining a symbol of everything I'd fought for. That's when Ethan, my older brother, stumbled in late. He didn't smile, didn't even say hello. He grabbed a champagne flute, lurked in the corner, eyes locked on me. I should have known. Just as I raised my glass to thank everyone he moved, one sharp swing champagne splashed across the dessert table, my gift shattered to the ground. Glass cutting through the grass. The crowd froze. A child gasped. Ethan pointed at me, voice shaking with rage. "This is the price you pay for acting superior." The backyard went silent. And then my father. My father wrapped him in a hug, whispering, "He just needs to let it out." Daniel stood frozen. Guests stared. And I said nothing. Not because I was in shock, because I already knew words wouldn't fix this. That night, when the house finally went quiet, I opened my laptop and made a choice no one saw coming. By 8:30 the next morning, when Ethan realized what I'd done, it was too late. It wasn't always like this. If you'd asked anyone who knew us as kids, they would have told you Rachel and Ethan Morgan were inseparable, the golden pair. But memory plays tricks. When I look back now, I see the cracks even in the photographs. I was the one with neat hair, my homework folded cleanly in my backpack, clutching a ribbon from the science fair. Ethan was beside me, smiling that wide grin, holding nothing in his hands but a guitar he barely knew how to play. Everyone thought he was charming, creative, full of promise. I knew better. Even at 10 years old, I could feel the weight shifting onto my shoulders. While other kids spent summers at camp, I worked part-time at a diner to save for college. The smell of burnt coffee and frying bacon still clings to that memory. My uniform always carried a faint grease stain, no matter how hard I scrubbed it. But I told myself it was worth it. Every dollar tucked into an envelope meant I was one step closer to building a life that wasn't fragile, that didn't depend on anyone else's mood swings. Ethan, meanwhile, spent those summers sleeping in, drifting from one garage band to another, promising mom and dad that his big break was coming. In high school, the difference only grew sharper. I was the honor student the kid teachers pointed to when they wanted to inspire the class. Ethan barely scraped by, skipping assignments, writing song lyrics in the margins of his notebooks. Our parents never seemed worried. "He's finding his way," Dad would say with a shrug, as if the world would patiently wait for him to grow up. Whenever I earned a scholarship or an award, Mom would pat my hand gently and say, "Don't brag too much. You know your brother's sensitive." That was the script of our family life. My achievements muted, his failures excused. When I launched my tech startup in my 20s, the grind nearly broke me. I still remember nights coding alone at a folding table, my fingers stiff and my eyes burning from hours of staring at the screen. Investors brushed me off, some with patronizing smiles, others with blunt dismissals. "You're too young. You don't have the experience." Each rejection was a stone in my chest, but I kept going. I believed if I worked hard enough, I could carve out something that was mine. And while I was chasing that dream, Ethan was chasing shadows. He'd call me at odd hours, his voice warm and playful at first. "Rach, can you help me out? Just $100 this time. Studio rent's due. Or I need new strings. This gig could be the one." At first, I gave in. I wanted to believe in him and the brother I remembered from childhood. 100 here, 200 there. By the time I realized how much I'd handed over, it was more than $15,000. $15,000. I'd scraped that together by skipping vacations, turning down dinners with friends, living off ramen noodles when my startup's funds ran dry. I was barely keeping my company alive, but he never saw that. On his Instagram, I'd scroll past glossy pictures of him in flashy jackets, drinks in hand, hashtags about the grind. I wanted to throw my phone across the room. His grind was built on my sacrifice, and still he had the nerve to tell people I didn't support him enough. Daniel, my husband, saw it clearly from the start. He'd place his hand over mine at the kitchen table, speaking gently but firmly. "Rachel, you're not his bank. You can't carry him forever." I wanted to believe him, but I couldn't shake the guilt. because every time I hesitated, my parents swooped in playing the same tired refrain. Be patient with Ethan. He's your brother. You've always been the strong one. Their words were chains, invisible but heavy. Strong one, responsible one. Translation, the one who doesn't need love, only duty. The irony was no matter how much I gave it, was never enough. If I sent money, Ethan spent it. If I withheld it, I was cold. If I achieved something, I was showing off. If I stayed quiet, I was still the measuring stick he hated. There was no winning, only draining. Last year, when my startup landed a major contract, I thought maybe the balance would shift. I thought they'd finally see me as more than a safety net. Instead, the calls from Ethan only grew more desperate, more entitled. Rent, speakers, a last chance guitar. Each no I gave felt like breaking a commandment, and each no came with punishment. Angry texts, bitter silences, or worse, my parents' disapproval. He just needs time, Dad would remind me. Mom's silence filled the spaces where comfort should have been, but inside something in me was changing. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, resentment replaced guilt. Every dollar I gave was a reminder of the nights I'd cried over spreadsheets, the contracts I'd begged for, the dignity I'd swallowed to get investors to listen. My success wasn't luck, it was blood and sleepless nights. And Ethan had the audacity to look at me with disdain, as though my hard-won victories were nothing but arrogance. I carried that quiet anger into every family dinner, every phone call, every Rachel, can you just help him out one more time? I smiled, nodded. Sometimes gave in, sometimes resisted, but I never let them see the fire that was building inside me. Because deep down, I knew one day something would snap. One day, Ethan's jealousy would spill into the open. One day, I'd stop being the strong one who carried everyone else. That day was closer than I realized. The breaking point didn't arrive with a thunderclap. It crept in quietly disguised as another one of Ethan's late-night phone calls. I still remember the vibration of my phone rattling against the nightstand at 11:47 p.m. Daniel stirred beside me, groaning softly, but I slipped out of bed and padded into the hallway. Ethan's name glowed across the screen like a warning. Against my better judgment, I answered. Rach, I need $5,000, he said, skipping any pretense of small talk. His tone wasn't desperate. It was expectant, like he was ordering coffee. My hand tightened around the phone. For what this time? There was a pause. Then the rustle of movement, his voice thick with excitement. A guitar. Not just any guitar, the guitar. This is it, Rach. With this, I'll finally get the sound I need. My career, I cut him off. Ethan, no. I can't keep doing this. Silence. Then his voice sharpened like a blade sliding from its sheath. You think you're better than me, don't you? The words hit harder than I expected. Not because they surprised me, but because they sounded like something he'd been rehearsing for years. He didn't wait for an answer. He hung up. I stood there in the dark hallway, the glow of the phone screen fading, and felt something splinter inside me. The walls of the house felt closer than they were, the air heavy. Daniel emerged from the bedroom, hair-tousled eyes half asleep but concerned. Another money call, he asked. I nodded. My throat felt tight, like if I spoke, the truth would pour out all at once. That I was exhausted, that I was drowning in guilt that wasn't mine, that I was tired of being strong for everyone else, while no one was strong for me. Instead, I whispered. I told him no. Daniel's gaze softened, then sharpened with pride. He pulled me into his arms, and for a moment, I felt steady. But deep down, I knew Ethan wouldn't let it end there. The storm rolled in faster than I expected. 2 days later, my father texted me a single line, "Be patient with your brother." No greeting, no context, just an instruction, like I was a soldier in his army expected to obey. My mother followed with a phone call. Her voice was gentle, but every word pressed down like a weight. Sweetheart, Ethan's under pressure. He just needs support. Don't be so hard on him. I wanted to scream into the receiver. Where was this concern when I skipped meals to pay rent? Where was this softness when I worked until my eyes burned? Instead, I said, I'm busy. Mom, and hung up. But the truth is, I wasn't busy. I was pacing my office at the startup, staring at the framed photo on my desk. It was from college graduation, me in cap and gown, Ethan in the background. His smile too wide, his eyes tight with resentment. I thought it was just my imagination back then. Now I knew better. The air between us grew colder with each passing day. Ethan stopped calling, stopped texting. At first I thought maybe he'd finally accepted it. Maybe he was growing up. But silence from Ethan was never peace, it was preparation. The weeks leading up to my birthday felt almost too calm. Daniel and I threw ourselves into planning the party. Our new house in Austin had this sprawling backyard wide enough for 50 people with oak trees lining the fence like sentinels. Daniel strung lights between the branches, tested speakers for soft jazz, even surprised me with a custom glass statue, sleek, modern, etched with my startup's logo. He wanted it to symbolize resilience achievement, a reminder of everything I'd fought to build. For the first time in years, I let myself believe things could be simple. That night, walking barefoot across the cool grass as Daniel tested the lights, I told myself the storm had passed. I should have known better. The evening of the party, the house buzzed with life. Friends clinked glasses. Laughter swirled with the smell of catered barbecue and cilantro from the taco trays. I wore a dress Daniel had picked out, deep blue, elegant, but understated. When I caught my reflection in the sliding glass doors, I almost didn't recognize myself. Someone happy, someone safe. Then Ethan walked in. Late, of course. Always late. He didn't say hello, didn't hand me a card or a gift. He just drifted toward the cooler, grabbed a drink, and leaned against a tree, eyes darting like a predator waiting for the right moment to pounce. A chill slid down my spine. Daniel noticed too, his eyes narrowing, a silent question aimed at me. "Do you want me to handle this?" I shook my head, forcing a smile, unwilling to let Ethan steal the spotlight. But he didn't have to steal it. He shattered it. When Daniel handed me the glass statue and the guests gathered for my toast, Ethan moved. He grabbed a champagne flute, flung its contents across the dessert table, then snatched the statue from my hands. One violent swing and the glass crashed against the ground, exploding into glittering shards that sparkled under the lights like cruel confetti. Gasps rippled. A child whimpered, my chest constricted, but not from shock. From inevitability. Ethan's voice cut the night open. "This is the price you pay for acting superior." His face twisted, veins bulging at his temples, years of jealousy spilling raw in front of everyone. I expected anger from my father. I expected tears from my mother. But instead, Dad stepped forward calm as a priest, wrapping Ethan in an embrace. "He just needs to let it out," he murmured, as though my humiliation was some trivial tantrum to be soothed. Mom nodded her eyes soft with concern, not for me, but for him. Daniel froze, fists tight at his sides, torn between stepping in and respecting my silence. The guests shifted uncomfortably, whispers rising. And me, I stood still, shards of glass glinting at my feet, my heart a furnace of quiet rage. I didn't shout, I didn't cry, I didn't beg for understanding. Because I knew in that moment words were useless. Something inside me hardened. The line had been crossed. The strong one had finally had enough. That night, while the house went dark and the world believed the party was over, I opened my laptop and began to rewrite the script of our family story. The house was quiet after the party, but not peaceful. Silence pressed in like a weight. The faint smell of barbecue still clung to the air, mixing with the acrid tang of spilled champagne. Outside, the backyard was littered with plastic cups, napkins curled in the damp grass, and the broken remnants of what had been my gift, a gleaming glass statue that had lasted less than 5 minutes in my hands. I sat at the kitchen table, the glow from my laptop screen carving sharp angles into the darkness. Daniel moved quietly behind me, stacking plates into the sink, his presence steady but cautious. He knew better than to ask what was going through my mind. I was past explaining, past asking for permission. For years, I had played the dutiful sister. I had wired money, vouched for opportunities, sacrificed my own peace to carry Ethan's chaos. I had listened as my parents excused him, soothed him, shielded him from consequences. But the image of him standing in my backyard, glass shards at my feet, smug under my father's arm, that image had burned something inside me clean away. I opened my banking app. Line after line of transfers stared back at me. $200, $500, $1,000. Over $12,000 sent to an account I'd set up for Ethan's music career. $12,000 that was supposed to buy him time in the studio, pay for mixing for equipment, for a dream he promised was just one step from reality. But no albums had been recorded, no demos released, just late-night parties, flashy jackets, Instagram selfies tagged on McQuire Grind while I sat alone in my office grinding for real. My finger hovered over the screen. For a moment, guilt tugged at me like a ghost, my mother's voice whispering, "He's your brother. You've always been the strong one." Then Ethan's words echoed louder. "This is the price you pay for acting superior." I pressed the button. In seconds, the balance drained from his account back into mine. 12,000 reclaimed. It felt like cutting through years of invisible rope, the kind that had bound me to his failures, the kind I'd mistaken for love. Daniel sat down beside me, his hand resting lightly on my shoulder. "You sure?" he asked, his voice low, almost reverent, like he knew this moment mattered more than he could articulate. I didn't look away from the screen. I've never been more sure. But I wasn't finished. I opened my email. Weeks earlier, I had vouched for Ethan with a small but respected record label here in Austin. I'd leveraged every ounce of credibility my startup carried, told the manager Ethan had raw talent worth betting on. They'd sent him a preliminary contract, a chance most musicians only dream of. He bragged about it to me, once his voice gleaming with pride, like it was his destiny, and I was merely the door he walked through. Not anymore. I drafted the email with careful precision. "I regret to inform you that I can no longer recommend my brother for this project. His readiness and reliability are not where they need to be. I sincerely apologize for any inconvenience this may cause." I read it twice. No malice, no spite, just the truth they needed to hear. Then I pressed send. It was after midnight when I finally closed the laptop. My body sagged against the chair, exhaustion rolling through me, but under it was something sharper relief. Daniel reached for my hand, warm grounding. "You've done enough for him," he said. I nodded, though words felt heavy. Enough wasn't the right word. I had done too much. By 8:30 the next morning, my phone lit up like a fire alarm. Text after text, Ethan's words blistering across the screen. "You screwed me over. The label pulled the contract because of you. Fix this now. I need that money. You can't just take it back. You owe me. You're nothing without me. Everyone knows it." I stared at the screen, sipping the coffee Daniel had brewed, its bitterness grounding me in a way no apology ever had. For the first time, I didn't reply. Daniel raised an eyebrow as he set his mug down. "He's freaking out, isn't he?" "Let him," I said. It startled me how calm I sounded. Years of bending, breaking, trying to keep the peace had left me raw, but now there was only clarity. Ethan had drawn his line in shattered glass. I was drawing mine in silence. I spent the morning at my office downtown, pouring myself into work, reviewing pitch decks, correcting code, listening to the buzz of my team's energy. For hours, I ignored the phone vibrating in my bag. Each buzz was Ethan clawing for control. Each time I refused to look, I felt stronger. By noon, another text slipped through. "You're going to regret this." I didn't flinch. Let him rage. Let him spiral. For the first time in my life, I wasn't cushioning his fall. That night, as Daniel and I sat on the couch, the TV murmuring in the background, I scrolled through the string of unanswered messages. It struck me then, Ethan wasn't angry because I'd betrayed him. He was furious because I'd finally stopped betraying myself. I set the phone face down on the table. The silence that followed wasn't heavy anymore. It was liberation. The first battle had been fought in silence, but Ethan was never one to stay quiet for long. By cutting the cord, I had stepped out of the role he'd cast me in the dependable sister, the endless ATM, the safety net he could unravel at will. And when I stopped playing along, he didn't just stumble, he thrashed. The morning after I reclaimed the money and pulled the label's contract, the text began like machine gun fire. At first, anger. "You ruined me. You'll regret this." Then desperation. "Please, Rach, I need that money. Just one more chance." Then the guilt, sharp as a knife. "Mom and Dad will never forgive you. You're tearing this family apart." I didn't answer a single one. Silence, I learned, is the sharpest weapon. But Ethan wasn't used to silence, so he turned louder. 2 days later, while I was at the office downtown, my assistant buzzed in her voice tight. "Rachel, there's someone here asking for you. He says he's your brother." My stomach sank. I walked to the lobby, heels echoing against the polished floor, and there he was, Ethan pacing like a caged animal, hair wild, eyes bloodshot. The moment he saw me, he lunged forward. "We need to talk," he said too loud, his voice drawing stares from employees. I kept my voice cold. "Not here." But he didn't care about here or there. His voice rose, echoing against glass walls. "You can't just ruin my life and walk away. You owe me." Every pair of eyes in the lobby burned into me. Years of carefully building respect in my startup. Years of convincing clients I was capable, reliable. And here was Ethan tearing at that image with bare hands. My pulse raced, but before I could speak, Daniel appeared. He'd been in a nearby meeting, and the moment he saw Ethan, his jaw tightened. "You need to leave," Daniel said, calm but firm, stepping between us. Ethan shoved his hands into his pockets, smirking like he'd won something. "What, you gonna throw me out? I'm her family." Daniel didn't flinch. He nodded at the security guard by the door. Within seconds, the guard approached, one hand resting on his radio. Ethan's smirk faltered. He muttered something under his breath, then stormed out, the glass doors slamming behind him. The whispers in the lobby lingered long after he left. I walked back to my office, my legs steady but my heart pounding. Daniel followed his voice low. "He's not going to stop." I knew he was right. That evening, the war shifted online. A friend sent me a link with a message. "Have you seen this?" It was a TikTok. Ethan sitting in his car phone, angled just right, tears welling in his eyes. His voice dripped with venomous charm. "My sister thinks she's better than everyone," he said to thousands of strangers. "She cut me off, took my money, destroyed my career. All because she's jealous of me." Jealous. The word made me laugh out loud, bitter and sharp. The video had thousands of views, comments pouring in. Some sympathetic, others furious on his behalf. "She's heartless. Families should stick together. Stay strong, bro." By the time I refreshed, there were 2 more videos, then 3. Each one painting me as the villain, each one gathering more strangers into his army of pity. He wasn't just lashing out anymore, he was branding himself as the underdog, the wounded artist crushed by a cruel sister. Daniel found me staring at the screen, fists clenched. "He's turning this into a circus." He said, his jaw tight. I nodded, but I didn't rage. I didn't even cry. I felt something colder focus, because Ethan wasn't the only one circling. My parents were never far behind. It started with a call from Dad. His voice was calm, almost rehearsed. "You need to help your brother. He's in a tough spot. You pulling that money, it hurt him. You need to fix this." I gripped the phone knuckles white. My throat burned with all the words I wanted to say. Where were you when he humiliated me in front of 50 people? Where were you when I cried myself to sleep after covering his debts? But I swallowed them down. "He needs to figure it out himself," I said, my tone steady. Dad sighed long and heavy, like I'd disappointed him in some sacred duty. Family doesn't give up on each other. And then he hung up. The next day, a text from Mom. Short, sharp cutting. "We're family. We stick together. Please think about your brother." It was a guilt trip condensed into 10 words. I showed it to Daniel over dinner. He read it, shook his head, and set the phone down with a thud. "They're enabling him," he said. "They always have. They always will." But the final blow came from a friend of mine, Dale, who moved in both startup and music circles. Over lunch at a diner, he leaned in, voice low. Your parents paid off $6,000 of Ethan's credit card debt. Found out through a buddy at the bank. They didn't tell you, did they? The fork slipped from my hand. $6,000. It shouldn't have surprised me. They'd always bailed him out, but doing it behind my back after everything they hadn't just chosen him. They'd betrayed me. I sat back, heart steady, oddly calm. No, I said. They didn't tell me. For the first time, the truth was undeniable. This wasn't just Ethan against me. It was Ethan armed with my parents' blind loyalty against the version of me they'd built strong, responsible, unyielding. The one who could absorb endless blows without ever breaking. But they were wrong. Because I wasn't breaking, I was sharpening. The knock came on a Sunday afternoon. 3 sharp raps against the front door of our Austin home, measured deliberate, the kind that carried intention. Daniel glanced at me from the couch, his brow furrowed. We both knew before I opened the door who it would be. My parents stood there, faces set, shoulders stiff. Mom clutched her purse like it was armor. Dad's jaw was tight, his eyes scanning past me into the living room as if daring Daniel to challenge him. "We need to talk," Dad said. He didn't ask. He stepped inside like it was still his house, like I was still a little girl under his roof. I gestured to the couch. My stomach knotted, but I kept my face neutral. Daniel moved to the kitchen counter, arms crossed, silent but present. I could feel his support radiating even from a few feet away. Dad didn't waste time. "You've gone too far," he said, voice low but sharp. "Your brother's struggling and you've made it worse. He needs you. You need to forgive him, help him get back on his feet." Mom nodded, her eyes soft with practiced pleading. "He's your family," she said. "You can't just turn your back." I sat across from them, hands folded in my lap. For a moment, I saw myself as they did, responsible, strong, unbending. The one who could take every hit and still smile. But I wasn't smiling now. Daniel spoke before I could. His voice was steady but edged with frustration. "You're not being fair," he said, eyes locked on my father. "Rachel has carried him for years. She's given him money connections, chances, everything, and he's thrown it all back at her. You saw what he did at the party. You've seen how he's dragged her name online. Why is it always her job to fix him?" Mom flinched, but Dad's jaw only tightened. "He's trying," he said firmly. "He's made mistakes, but he's your brother." Daniel's hands clenched against the counter. "He's not trying. He's manipulating, and you're enabling it." I raised a hand, cutting the tension. My voice came out calm, almost too calm. "Enough." Both of my parents turned to me. "I'm done," I said. The words felt like steel. I've given him money, time, opportunities. I've carried him while he's mocked me, humiliated me, turned strangers against me. And you, my voice cracked just slightly, but I didn't stop. You've asked me to keep doing it no matter the cost. But I won't anymore. He's on his own. Mom's eyes widened. "You don't mean that." Her voice trembled. "You're his sister." "I do mean it," I said, steady now. "Being his sister doesn't mean sacrificing my life to clean up his choices. It doesn't mean funding his failures. It doesn't mean letting him destroy me just to keep the peace." Dad leaned forward, his face red. "You're being selfish." The word should have stung. Instead, it lit something sharp inside me. For 32 years, I'd been the opposite of selfish. I'd given until there was nothing left. And for what? To watch my brother destroy every gift I handed him, while my parents applauded his chaos and ignored my scars. I met Dad's glare head on. "No, I'm being sane." The room fell silent. Mom opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off. "I love you, but you need to understand I will not carry him anymore. Don't come here asking me to." Daniel moved to my side, then his hand warm on my shoulder, a silent punctuation mark to my words. My parents sat there stunned, as if the script they'd relied on for decades had suddenly been rewritten. For the first time, they had no rebuttal. They stayed a few minutes longer, shifting uncomfortably, then left in silence. The door clicked shut behind them, but the echo of that moment lingered like a church bell in my chest. In the days that followed, the ripple effect began. The record label Ethan had been chasing, the bigger one, the one he bragged about to anyone who'd listen, pulled the plug. Word spread quickly in Austin's music circles. He didn't have the work ethic. He didn't have the discipline. The crowdfunding campaign he launched sputtered out, barely scraping $1,000 before interest dried up. Through mutual acquaintances, I heard he'd taken a part-time job at a coffee shop, bussing tables and steaming milk for lattes. His TikTok slowed to a trickle, views dwindling, comments turning sour. His brand of victimhood had a short shelf life. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel pity. What I felt was distance, like watching a storm fade on the horizon. Daniel and I packed our home a month later, boxing up the memories of that disastrous birthday night. The glass shards had long been swept away, but the fracture lines ran deeper than the floorboards. We moved to a smaller house in the suburbs, quiet, shaded by cedar trees, far from the chaos. We didn't tell anyone our new address, not even my parents, especially not Ethan. My phone, once buzzing with calls and guilt-soaked messages, grew still. For the first time in years, I slept without flinching at the sound of a notification. One evening, as Daniel and I sat on the porch, sipping iced tea, the sky streaked orange with sunset, he turned to me. "You did what you had to," he said softly. I nodded. The words didn't bring joy, but they brought peace. Because this was the truth, my brother's downfall wasn't my doing. It was his. My parents' enabling hadn't saved him. It had only delayed the fall, and my silence, my refusal to bend any more, that was the moment I finally saved myself. For 32 years, I believed being the strong one meant carrying everyone else. But the strongest thing I'd ever done was put the weight down. The day we closed the door on our old house, I lingered in the hallway longer than I should have. The walls stood bare, stripped of the party lights and laughter that had once filled them. But I could still hear echoes, the shattering of glass, the sharp intake of breath from guests' Ethan's voice cutting me open in front of everyone. For months I'd carried that night like a stone in my chest. Now, with one last click of the lock, I set it down. Our new home was smaller, tucked into a quiet suburb on the edge of Austin, but it felt expansive in ways square footage couldn't measure. The backyard wasn't sprawling. It was framed by cedar trees, their branches whispering in the evening breeze. Birds nested above their calls, sharp and sweet. No ghosts lingered in those walls, no memories of chaos, only the possibility of something calmer. Daniel and I unpacked slowly, deliberately. No rush. No urgency. We arranged furniture not for show, but for comfort. A couch angled toward the fireplace, our favorite mugs lined neatly in the cabinet, a small desk by the window where I could work with the sun spilling in. Each choice felt like reclaiming space that had once been invaded, rewriting the script of what home meant. My phone, once a constant battlefield of messages, grew still. Ethan's number was blocked. My parents, after that final confrontation, hadn't reached out again. Some days the silence felt strange, like missing a sound you'd grown used to. But most days it felt like peace. At night, I would lie awake sometimes, listening to Daniel's steady breathing and think about the years I'd spent believing sacrifice was the same as love. That being the strong one meant emptying myself out until there was nothing left. I realize now that strength wasn't measured by how much you could carry, but by what you chose to set down. One evening, sitting on the porch with iced tea in hand, Daniel leaned back and said, "We should take a trip. Just us. Somewhere warm." I laughed softly. "Hawaii," I said, without hesitation. The idea grew quickly, almost too quickly. Within hours, we were pulling up photos of Maui on my laptop, the turquoise water, the lush green cliffs, the golden beaches. We booked flights, chose a small resort near the ocean, argued playfully about whether we'd snorkel or hike first. The laughter that bubbled between us that night felt light, unburdened, like air rushing into lungs that had been held too long. The morning after I woke early, the house quiet except for the hum of the coffee maker. I stood at the window mug in hand, watching the cedar trees sway. The sun rose gently, not with drama, but with steadiness painting the backyard in gold. And for the first time in years, I felt steady too. My startup was thriving again, my team stronger than ever. Daniel and I were building a marriage rooted not in crisis management, but in partnership. The world felt open, not closed. And it struck me then I didn't need my parents' approval to feel worthy. I didn't need Ethan's gratitude to feel generous. I didn't need anyone's permission to live freely. Family should lift you. It should be a place of rest, not a battlefield. I'd spent too long believing blood was an unbreakable chain when really it was a choice. And I was finally choosing myself. I don't know what Ethan's life looks like now. I've heard whispers through acquaintances that he still works at the coffee shop, that the crowdfunding campaign fizzled out, that the TikTok fame vanished as quickly as it came. I don't stalk his pages. I don't scroll through his drama. I don't let his chaos dictate my peace anymore. As for my parents, I imagine they still hope I'll come back into the role they assigned me, the fixer, the strong one, the daughter who makes excuses for her brother. Maybe they'll wait forever. But I've stopped waiting for their recognition. Love that demands sacrifice without reciprocity isn't love, it's control. Our trip to Hawaii became more than just a vacation. It was a marker, a declaration. Daniel and I stood barefoot on a stretch of sand at sunset waves, rolling in soft and steady. The sky was a riot of pink and orange, and the air smelled of salt and hibiscus. I closed my eyes, the ocean's rhythm thudding in my chest like a heartbeat, and let it wash over me, the past, the anger, the guilt. For years, I thought freedom meant proving myself, to my brother, to my parents, to everyone who doubted me. But standing there, hand in Daniel's, I realized freedom meant something else entirely, walking away from what breaks you and refusing to look back. I'll always carry the scars of my family's betrayal. But scars aren't just reminders of pain, they're proof of survival. And survival, I've learned, can grow into strength. That's the echo I carry now. Not Ethan's voice, not my parents' guilt, my own, steady, clear, free. Have you ever had to walk away from family for the sake of your peace? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear it. And if Rachel's journey resonated, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss the next story.